This year's wave of attempts at a summer offensive by the enemy from the territory of the Russian Federation is being choked off in the same way as last year's attempt at offensive actions by the enemy in the Kharkiv region. This assessment was given by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, General Alexander Syrsky, while on the North Slobozhansky axis and based on the performance in May-June. The advance of Russian troops in the border area of Sumy region has been stopped as of this week, and the line of combat contact has been stabilized. In certain areas, our units are successfully using active defense tactics and liberating Ukrainian land in the border area of Sumy region. According to General Alexander Syrsky on the North Slobozhansky and Kursk axes, Ukrainian troops once again contained about 50,000 Russian troops. Offensive actions in the Glushkov district of the Kursk region forced the enemy to send a certain part of the troops to defend its territory, which reduced its offensive capabilities in the Sumy region. A special group on the defense of the Sumy region has been created in the command of the grouping on the North Slobozhansky axis. The primary tasks are to strengthen the fortifications and expand the system of engineering and fortification barriers. The Commander-in-Chief inspected the fortifications on site, including the part under the responsibility of the region's military administration and the State Special Transport Service. The work is ongoing, but it should be accelerated taking into account the requirements of modern warfare, noted General Alexander Syrsky. The Commander-in-Chief visited the brigade command posts, thanked all the defenders of Sumy region, and awarded the best soldiers with honorary decorations. On Thursday, as part of the continuation of the large prisoners exchange, in accordance with the agreements in Istanbul, Ukrainian heroes returned home. The specifics of this exchange is the return of young defenders, under the age of 25. The youngest soldier is only 24. He was captured near Mariupol when he was 21 years old. Wounded and seriously ill defenders who had been in captivity for more than 3 years were also released. Among them were servicemen of the Navy, the airborne assault troops, the territorial defense, the Ukrainian National Guard, and the Ukrainian State Border Guard. The National Guardsmen who defended the Chernobyl MPP in the first days of the full-scale invasion also returned home. As noted by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, this exchange is not just part of systematic work. It is the lives of young people who have gone through severe trials, withstood, survived, and today they are home. The Russian military is increasingly using FPV drones to carry out targeted strikes on civilians in Ukraine, according to a report by the UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission. Drones have become one of the leading causes of civilian deaths and injuries in Ukraine, sometimes even surpassing missiles, artillery, and aerial bombs. According to the UN analysis, Russian military forces deliberately targeted civilians. The victims documented by the mission included civilians on bicycles, in personal vehicles, evacuation buses, ambulances, during humanitarian missions, out for walks, or near their homes. The UN mission concluded that this constitutes a violation of international humanitarian law, and some incidents can be considered war crimes. The report calls for an end to the deliberate targeting of civilians and for investigations into the reported cases. Since the start of the full-scale war, Russia has used 28,743 Shahed-type UAVs against Ukraine. This figure was mentioned by the President of Ukraine in his speech to the Dutch Parliament. In June of this year alone, the enemy has already launched 2,736 Shaheds. Volodymyr Zelensky stressed that Russia would never have been able to do this if it weren't for its ties with the regime in Iran, and Ukraine would never have been able to shoot down most of these drones without the support of its partners. According to the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, to end the war and build a lasting peace, we need maximum isolation of Russia and stability in the defense support for Ukraine. If Russia feels that we are responding harshly and painfully, then peace will become the most popular topic in Moscow, and we will achieve this together, Zelensky noted. Strike drones of the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine hit the S-400 Triumph air defense system in Crimea. The military intelligence reported that the combat operation was carried out by the Ghost Special Unit. In particular, the drones hit two multifunctional radar control stations responsible for detecting, tracking targets, and guiding missiles. Two detection radar stations that provide detection, tracking, and targeting for missile systems were also hit. Intelligence officers report that the S-400 launcher was hit as well. Drones consistently continue to weaken Russian air defense in temporarily occupied Crimea, noted in the military intelligence. It is worth reminding that the S-400 Triumph air defense system in the Russian armed forces replaced the Soviet-Russian S-300 air defense system and is in fact its modernized version. The head of the British government announced a new aid package. According to the British newspaper The Guardian, it is a matter of 350 air defense missiles. The package is part of the UK's largest year aid package to Ukraine, worth £4.5 billion. On Tuesday, Ukraine and the UK also agreed to jointly produce drones. The presidents of Ukraine and France also discussed the possibility of increasing the supply of French Mirage fighter jets and launching joint production of interceptor drones. Volodymyr Zelensky, at the Defense Industries Forum in The Hague, called on partners to participate more actively in joint defense production. He noted that Ukraine's capabilities in this area have already exceeded $35 billion. However, about 40% of this potential does not have adequate funding. As an example, the president mentioned Ukraine's capability to produce more than 8 million drones of various types, provided that appropriate funds are available. NATO countries will include aid for Ukraine in overall defense spending, according to the final declaration of the NATO summit that ended on Wednesday in the Netherlands. Allies reaffirm their enduring sovereign commitments to provide support to Ukraine, whose security contributes to ours, and, to this end, will include direct contributions towards Ukraine's defense and its defense industry when calculating Allies' defense spending, the document says. At the same time, it is noted that the Allies agreed to increase defense spending to 5% of GDP within 10 years. On the sidelines of the NATO summit, the presidents of Ukraine and the United States held a meeting and discussed practical steps to strengthen the Ukrainian military with appropriate means. In particular, it was about strengthening Ukraine's air defense. The presidents agreed to continue this dialogue with the involvement of European partners, the Office of the President of Ukraine noted. At a press conference, President Trump announced that he was leaving open the possibility of providing new aid to Ukraine from the United States. It's worth reminding that as of mid-year, NATO countries had already pledged to provide Ukraine with 35 billion euros in military assistance. Last year, this figure was just over 50 billion euros for the entire year. European Council President Antonio Costa said that the European Union needs a unified defense system that will effectively deter Russia. According to him, the European Union can no longer afford a fragmented defense policy. Instead, a coordinated, pan-European system is needed. The head of the European Council emphasized the need to abandon the established practice of duplicating defense capabilities in each individual state and called for the consolidation of efforts. Ukraine and the Council of Europe have concluded an agreement on the establishment of a special tribunal for the crime of Russian aggression against Ukraine. The document was signed in Strasbourg by the President of Ukraine and the Secretary General of the Council of Europe. The future special tribunal will allow for investigations against the state's top leadership, who are usually protected by personal immunities, but sentencing will only be possible after they lose their positions. The special tribunal will also cooperate with the International Criminal Court. Proceedings can be investigated in parallel by both institutions without interfering with each other's work. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that more real steps are needed for the agreement to create a special tribunal for the Russian Federation to work. 39 states, the EU, and the Council of Europe joined the work to establish the special tribunal. Victory will be ours. The program was created by the main communications directorate of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.